The next balance patch for 40k is expected in 2 weeks' time, about the 3rd of September. Yet today we have an emergency balance patch, as a lot of points get raised and the introduction of more rules. Perhaps this is being done now so that there are 2 weeks of more data before the next balance patch, or the next balance patch is delayed a bit further. Getting extra data is my only reason to think this is why they're changing points now, just so they're ready for next time. Because in the meta, some armies may be doing really well against the current meta, but if they were going to nerf the Knights and the Death Guard in the balance patch, would they also then need to nerf other things because they've been doing well? I'm thinking of the Gene Stealer cult in particular. The Gene Stealer cult don't need any points increases. Some weeks they're on 60% win rate, others 40% win rate. The 60 is a bit more common than 40%. Tournament win rates are what Games Workshop uses to figure out balance. They don't use lots of casual games. And when it's tournaments, it's really the biggest tournaments. In the bigger tournaments, there are lots of Death Guard, lots of Imperial and Chaos Knights because of their low points. Gene Stealer Cult does well against them as we can outscore the smaller number of Knights and can bring them down, especially with the Host of Ascension, which is what we see in most tournaments. It's what I use in tournaments. The Death Guard are mostly shooting, or they're a Poxwalker horde, and we have the bodies to outdo the zombies and can avoid the shooting with Host of Ascension stratagems. The Gene Stealer cult, especially the Host of Ascension, counters the current meta, while the armies that counter the Host of Ascension are fast-moving multi-attack combat armies, Tyranid Gene Stealers, Blood Angels, Emperor's Children. But these armies aren't coming out to play at tournaments because they can't handle the Knights or the Death Guard very well. We are playing rock, paper, scissors without the scissors. As soon as the Knights and the Death Guard have their points increase, they will appear less frequently at tournaments, they won't be as powerful at tournaments, and Gene Stealer cult win rate will go down as Black Templars and World Eaters come at us. Of course, this doesn't really apply in smaller tournaments, the kind that are 20 people on picnic tables in a barn instead of 80 people in a sports hall. In the UK, the armies you see most at smaller tournaments are about a month behind whatever the Combat Patrol magazine has put out. There have been a lot of new Eldar and Chaos Space Marine armies, then Orcs started appearing more, and that had nothing to do with rules or points changes, just the cheapness of models. That follows the local affordability meta. So come January 2026, in the UK, there may be more Gene Stealer cult and World Eater players. First, we have a points increase on the Imperial Knights and the Chaos Knights. It's a pretty hefty increase. I have been able to beat the Knights before. That mostly involved getting lucky on enemy battle shock, caused by, say, the Patriarch, and then failing a few important saves. Then there's also remembering the grenade stratagem and not being afraid to overkill the Knights. An underkilled Knight is almost as powerful as a full strength Knight. It is an especially painful matchup for the Sisters because Melter weapons don't work as anti-vehicle weapons without lots of good miracle dice. In a straight-up fight, it is hard to take on the Knights, but by using Defenders of the Faith on the Battle Sisters and lots of small units, we can outscore them. That's how we win. That and focusing on killing one of the Knights at a time with Exorcists, Castigators, Immolators, but in reverse order, and Val and the Warsuits, and the Grenade Stratagem. Overkill is fine. And that reduces their ability to score points. The Deathwatch don't do great against Knights. We don't have the bodies, and the Knights have lots of damage 2 or higher weapons. They are also not aliens, so the veteran kill teams don't get the rerolls. In the Black Spear Task Force, you can have one turn with lethal hits. The Indomitor kill team can do well with their increased strength, but if there's only 1 or 2 units of them in your army, that isn't going to cut it. The Gene Stealer cult can do lots of multiple small unit tactics, and they can take out the Knights with the Biophagus to have lethal hits, the Benefactus to have lethal hits, and lots of other Host of Ascension combos can bring down a Knight if you put your all into it. In the Biosanctic Broodsurge, the Aberrants and the Pure Strain Gene Stealers with the Patriarch can also make a mess of them. The Death Guard are also a faction that have kept winning tournaments, and if they win a tournament, maybe 2nd and 3rd place is also Death Guard. Their rules are fun and cool, and Death Guard players are enjoying them, but I think it was right to increase the points of a lot of things in their army because they just have a few too many units. And 40k tables at 2000 points are crowded enough as it is. Genestealer Cult, as long as you're shooting, you can stay outside of 9 inches when you fire your weapons, so the Host of Ascension is fine. They're not going to get affected by the Death Guard contagion range. The Death Watch have high enough strength attacks and high enough damage to kill Space Marine similar kinds of armies. It's Sisters that really suffer. I don't think I've beaten Death Guard with Sisters since the Death Guard Codex came out. If we're going to take objectives, we have to get onto the objectives. And then the Death Guard can come closer and, oh look, we have one less armor save. The armor save is the main thing that protects us. So the points going up for the Death Guard feels about right. It's a lot of little increases across the board rather than a target to one particular unit. As an example, this Shamblerot Vectorium Death Guard list that came first at the West allotment at War II tournament had Typhus, a lot of Contagion, a lot of Virulence, 4 lots of 20 Poxwalkers, another squad of 10 Poxwalkers, 2 lots of 3 Death Shroud Terminators, a pair of Chaos Spawn, 3 Foated Bloat Drones with Blight Launchers, 2 Foated Bloat Drones with Flesh Mowers, 2 Predator Destructors, and came to 2,000 points. That is now 2,135 points. So that army would have to lose just over 20 Poxwalkers, and then it still works exactly the same. As that is the Poxwalker detachment, you maybe don't want to lose the 20 Poxwalkers. The Knights and Chaos Knights have had the same thing. Their points overall have gone up. So the army operates much the same, there's no rules changes. However, you will find that there are fewer knights in enemy armies. I think a lot of these points changes are fair. Canis Rex at 380 points was horribly cheap. Made for a great ally for Imperial Agents, Death Watch and Sisters of Battle, but was somewhat overtuned. The Armiger Warglaves are the same points, so if you take Armiger Warglaves as your allies, it's fine. You can keep going with those Warglaves. For most of the armies we play, the points going up is only a benefit. I've never found Knights particularly fun to play against, as it is very much a stat check army. Does the army that you brought have enough melter weapons and high strength weapons and high AP weapons with enough damage to take out the Knights? If you don't, you're going to have to do your best to score on victory points alone, and your army is very slowly blown up. It's not super fun. According to Games Workshop, part of the reason they're doing a balance patch now is because the Votann Codex is going to be released this weekend. The Codex will come out on the 23rd of August. So yes, that means the points in the Codex are invalidated before the Codex comes out. This is standard Games Workshop operating procedure this year. And so one points announcement meant that since they're in the document anyway, changing some points, why not also change the Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights and Death Guard points at the same time? If you see that the balance patch document and the index card FAQ and errata have also been updated, that is just to remove any reference to the Votann, because any changes there were references to the Votann index. And their army rule is changing. They're not going to have grudge tokens anymore, so previous balance patches don't really apply, therefore they get deleted. The extra new stuff is a new Space Marine detachment, because whatever happens to any other faction, the Space Marines need some sort of equal attention cake. The new detachment is the Forgefathers Seekers. This is the Salamanders looking for relics of Vulkan, and this doesn't replace the Firestorm Assault Force, but they're very similar. Both have points on the Munitorum Field Manual. But the Forgefathers Seekers is Salamanders only. So you can do generic Space Marines, but you couldn't add Marnius Calgar. You couldn't add a Blood Angels Death Company. It's Salamander characters only, so you get a much more Salamander-feeling detachment, even though it is just a Firestorm Assault Force with a few tweaks. The detachment rule is the same as the Firestorm Assault Force. All the Adeptus Astartes models in your army have the Assault keyword, meaning that they can advance and still shoot. And if they shoot at an enemy within 12 inches, you get +1 strength to the attack. Nobody tell the Bringers of Flame, they're still on 6 inches. But we see an option. Instead of improving the Bringers of Flame detachment, have a brand new Battle Sisters detachment that could be Argent Shroud themed with lots of fast moving Foot Sisters. They care less about the fire, more about the speed, and yet it is very, very similar to the Bringers of Flame. That would probably only happen if there were special characters related to the Argent Shroud. and because the Adeptus Sororitas have such a small range, especially compared to the Space Marines, all of the characters can be taken by any of the orders. They are not keyword locked. Celestine is not Our Martyred Lady, Aveline is not Sacred Rose. Whatever the colour of your army, however you want to paint the model, you can take them in your sister's army. But if Games Workshop gave the Adeptus Sororitas a new detachment in September that was very much like the Bringers of Flame detachment, I would call them lazy SOBs. SOB does not stand for Sisters of Battle. The Forgefather Seekers is like the Firestorm Assault Force, but it is less about the transports. The difficulty with the Firestorm Assault Force was that as soon as your transports are destroyed, you had 3 stratagems. And one of them is Armor of Contempt that you're used to just having all of the time. 4 of the stratagems are the same as with the Firestorm Assault Force, 2 of them are new. Yes, there is Armor of Contempt. There is still Crucible of Battle, so that when you're shooting at an enemy or fighting an enemy that is the closest eligible target within 6 inches, you can add 1 to the wound roll. That's a great stratagem like all of the time. Unless your armor penetration 0 and the enemy has a very good save, you're probably going to want to use Crucible of Battle. Then your ranged weapons that are getting +1 strength from the detachment rule, which may tip them into wounding on a 3+, and now wounding on a 2+. Flamers can melt hordes. Flamers and things that went from wounding a tough enemy on a 6 to wounding on a 5 can now be pushed to wound them on a 4, because increased strength and +1 to wound can stack. Immolation Protocols is still here for 2 command points, so the torrent weapons get devastating wounds. Infernus Marines are recommended, as are Flame Gauntlet Aggressors, and anything else that is mass torrent weapons. Burning Vengeance is the one transport stratagem that the Forgefather's Seekers retains. In the enemy shooting phase, once the enemy has shot one of your transports, as long as you weren't destroyed, a unit inside can get out and make a shooting attack back. The main benefit of this is having something like a Devastator squad within a Rhino or a Razorback. It gets shot, the Devastator squad gets out and shoots back at the tank hunting enemy, usually something that's pretty big and nasty itself. The 2 other stratagems we have seen before in other detachments. Wrathful Inferno is having an infantry unit fall back and still be able to shoot. Pretty standard 40k 10th edition things. Blazing Earth is used at the start of the enemy's charge phase. One of your units that has torrent weapons, because we're keeping with the theme of torrent weapons, they can pick an enemy unit within 12, and that enemy unit is -2 to their charge. That doesn't have to be an enemy unit that is charging your unit that you use the stratagem on. It is just any unit that that particular enemy tries to charge. Can't be used on monsters, can't be used on vehicles, can't be used on things that can fly. So it's very similar to other -2 to enemy charges that we've seen, but there's extra stipulations. And you do this at the start of the enemy's charge phase, so it is before they have declared any charges. Maybe they won't declare a charge with that unit, but you tend to know if there's a combat unit coming towards you, they're probably going to declare a charge. But potentially, it could be done and the enemy wasn't going to charge anyway. What about the character to lead this detachment? Vulkan He'stan. If you're thinking, wow, that looks crazy, look at all these amazing abilities he has. He's Objective Control 10 and has a 4+ Fear No Pain. Yes, just like in the Space Marine Codex. Vulkan He'stan was already there and very much the same. The Gauntlet of the Forge is a pistol now. He's gained the Tacticus keyword for no real reason, but he can still go in a Rhino if he's attached to a tactical squad. He is still 100 points with barely any rules changes. The new model seems to come on a 40mm base. The old model was officially on a 32mm base according to the base size guide. So the base has changed, but that affects the rules, and yet the points remain the same? It's almost like the base size doesn't really matter. With no changes to the Genestealer Cult, the Sisters, or the Deathwatch in this balance patch, because the Deathwatch can't use the new detachment, all we have is penalties to our enemies, and allies if you were allying in Imperial Knights. I will make a video with more expectations for the September balance patch for our factions. Until then, have a great day of 40k.